We're live. Here we go. All
Do
right.
you like our matching black hoodies?
I
Should
do.
we
Now,
start with that?
you have the WIP hoodie on. I have a soccer hoodie on. So slightly different. But yeah, I mean, you have a cooler hat on than I do. I am starting to wear different kinds of hats. I don't have the cool flat brim bent hat like you. I'm doing more like the dad hat thing.
Yeah, I kind of like a little structure to my headwear. I
I like
like. I
it.
don't know. I don't know if I have a flat top of my head, but I just feel like this fits me better. I think it
You
gives me a
you
little more
should
height.
you should have worn your Miami glasses.
Oh, the glasses I normally wear. It's too early.
Yes,
If we
exactly.
had done this at like 10:30 after the schedule reveal show, like they would be on.
Yes. So last thing, and then we'll get started because I'm sure people are ready for this to get going. But I feel like my day ends when I take my contacts out. Like people will say like when you take their face off, like take the makeup. I feel like me taking my contacts out is when I'm done work for the day.
I think my
So
day starts when I put like my watch on, and as soon as I take it's over. I'm done.
there you go. All right. Well, it's good to know. Okay. All right. You ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Three, two. What's going on, everybody? How are you all doing? Welcome to a special late night breaking kind of emergency edition of the Go Birds podcast as the Eagles 2025 schedule is officially released. We are not here with James as he still makes his way back from California, but that's okay. We got the best possible replacement, and that is our buddy Tucker. What up, buddy?
How's it going? I feel honored to be, James Seltzer, a legend at WP, a legendary
Yes,
producer, a
exactly.
legendary podcast host, and here we are, just filling in as he takes it. Like he's been in California for a week now. I don't know if
It
he's
feels
coming
like
back
he's been
on,
in California for forever, to be completely
like, is he
honest.
coming back on horseback? I'm not really sure. Remember, he had the
Well,
the issues coming back from Texas, so who
yes,
knows
yes,
how he's getting back? But hopefully he's back before the end of the week to talk about
yeah.
what we're about to talk about, which is the schedule.
Well, the good news is he will be back on Thursday. We're going to do a Go Birds pod. So, for those who want to hear James' take on the schedule, we'll have that Thursday. And also, obviously, he'll be on the WIP morning show talking about that. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. I actually do think this is one of the most important days in the Eagles season. Like, the schedule absolutely matters. How it plays out, the way your games are put together, when you play certain opponents, all those things are super, super important to the Eagles' ability to repeat as Super Bowl champions, to their ability to get to the playoffs, which I think we all assume they will. But how the games are laid out really, really matters. So now we know the schedule, and we're going to go through, which is, I think, one of the best traditions in NFL media, and do the instant reaction, instant win loss column. I hate people on Twitter. They're like, oh, how can you do it right away? Because it's fun. That's why it's fun to do our initial win loss prediction. If you're not in this to have fun, why are you doing it? So we're going to get into that. But Tucker, first, give me your initial thought, just overarching on the schedule.
I think the craziest thing, just to see it kind of laid out when you put every game together,
Mhm.
they have no back to back home games
It's
throughout, and
crazy.
as a result, like they only have two road trips that are 2 weeks in a row. Like week 6 and 7, they're at the Giants and at Minnesota, and then again later on in the season, they're at Washington and at Buffalo. But other than that, I mean, this is a team that played at home 8 straight weeks, right, to end the season. And then if you include their playoff run,
Yeah,
I guess
true.
outside of they had one road game to Carolina, maybe, or to
Last
Washington. Like,
year, I think it was Washington, Kenny
yeah,
Pickett.
at
But
the end of the
yes,
season, right? Like they had like 4 straight home games to end the season. They had that game, and then they are obviously at home for 3 postseason games. It's going to be kind of interesting. Like I'm curious as to a team that has great home field advantage, that loves playing at home, that has a lot of
yeah,
success playing at home. I'm just curious how that works. Obviously, we knew they would have one less home game than they would because the AFC gets 9 home games this year. But the fact that it's not really stacked like that it is so even, where every home game you're then going out on the road immediately after. I'm just curious as to how that travel, and the way you don't necessarily get to really enjoy your bed for more than 1 week at a time. I'm curious as to how that would affect the team.
well, I think that one thing that's definitely true about the schedule is it's a hard schedule to build momentum. Now, before we like completely dive into it, it is worth mentioning that in the last 3 years, the Eagles have won 11 plus games each of the last 3 seasons. They've won 14 plus games 2 of those 3 seasons. It could have been 15 games last year. And in the year they won 11 games, it took one of the worst collapses you'll see in NFL history for them to end with 11 games. So, as people put together their win loss prediction, I do think it's important to remind everybody predicting this team wins 13, 14, 15 games is not crazy. That is more on par with what they've been than I think a super opportunistic, like, or optimistic, homer way to view the schedule. This is a team that with Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts running the show wins a lot of games, and they win way, way more than they lose. So while there are different parts of the schedule that I think are tough, and the opponents certainly are tough, the Eagles have had 3 straight years of variations of schedules. Tough schedules, easy schedules, road games, away games, long stretches on the road, long stretches at homes. And they have won in almost every single fashion, right? Really, the only thing that got them was the gauntlet in 2023 from a schedule perspective. And that, I think, you could argue was going to happen because they're coming off of losing the Super Bowl. But regardless, that's really the only thing that got them. So I'll say that first. The second thing I'll say is I think it's a tough schedule to build momentum with. If you look at it, now last year they start 2-2. They have that horrendous loss at Tampa Bay, and we all know how that went. They won 15 their next 16, whatever it is. They win the Super Bowl. They're one of the best teams we've ever seen in Philadelphia. That being said, at Dallas to start the season, I think a relatively easy game, but maybe easy is not the right word. I think it's a very winnable game. So you got Dallas, but then you go at Kansas City versus Los Angeles at Tampa Bay. I would be very, very surprised if this team is 1-3. But Kansas City and the Rams are both definitely games that are somewhat coin flips. I think the Eagles will be favorites, but I think they're somewhat coin flips. And then Tampa Bay, Jalen always struggles against them. So I think it's tough at the beginning of the schedule to really get things going and get momentum going. And let me just say one more thing before I know I'm talking long. But then you have the Giants Thursday at Minnesota, not a super easy game. In the second half of the schedule, they only go Sunday to Sunday one time, and they only have one 1 o'clock game. So as James, our good buddy, our podcast partner here, says, like, athletes are creatures of habits. That second half of the schedule, it's going to be hard to get in a rhythm. So to what you said about only sleeping in your bed like 1 week in a row, like, it's just a weird schedule to me, and I think it's a tough one to build momentum with.
Yeah, just in general, like, we normally do this thing where you try to find pockets of easy wins, right? And maybe
Right.
the kind of second quarter of the season with Broncos, Giants, Vikings, Giants, maybe the easiest part of that. But you kind of look, like you said early on, going to Kansas City. I know what happened a few months ago, but that's not necessarily an easy game. That's a game the Eagles will probably be underdogs for. Playing a Rams team that's hell bent on revenge after you beat them in the NFC divisional game, going to Tampa Bay, a team you've struggled with every time except for the regular season of 2022. I mean, that's a tough part. And then you have, like you said, you kind of look at the second half. You have Monday night, then Sunday night, then 4 o'clock, then Friday, then Monday night, then 1 o'clock on Sunday, then Saturday, then Sunday, and then TBD for Week 18. And you add in the fact that your final 3 games, 2 are against the team that you beat in the NFC Championship game, and the others against, a Buffalo Bills team that has the reigning MVP and Josh Allen. And like you said, like, there's very limited pockets in the schedule where you can, breathe easy and say, well, they start 1-3, that's okay, because they could pick up 4 wins easy, but before the bye. Or hey, if they stumble before the bye, they can come out of it. They can get hot in early November and kind of rip off a couple wins, but before Thanksgiving. That just doesn't exist in the schedule, really.
Yeah, I think the only stretches of the schedule you could look at where you were like, all right, here's a chance to rack some wins up. Like, let's say they start 2-2, or let's go worst case scenario. Let's say they beat the Cowboys, and I just don't think they'd lose 3 games in a row. But let's just say they actually lost 3 games in a row. I do think the Broncos, Giants twice over a 4-week stretch would probably be your best chance to stack some wins up there. At Minnesota, I saw a stat today. I think they haven't won. I copy and pasted it. And I apologize to whoever tweeted this out. I forgot to write it down. But the Eagles have not beaten the Vikings in Minnesota in a regular season game since 2007. Now, that doesn't include playoffs, but like, in Minnesota, they have traditionally struggled there. So you got to win both Giants games. Now, the tough thing about getting the Giants early on in the season is, in theory, they still will have some hope. Now, I think one positive, though, to that is I bet they start Russell Wilson, and I think Jackson Dart's a better quarterback. I'm in on Jackson Dart, and I think Russell Wilson's just biding his time. So I do think there is some advantage to getting the Vikings early on where, yes, they have hope, but you're also just kind of sitting there and waiting for Jackson Dart to play. But that Broncos Giants stretch with the Vikings is probably your only chance to like stack a bunch of wins if you need them. You could argue the Raiders, like I think that's a very winnable game, week 15 at home. At the Chargers, I think it's a tough one. We'll talk about that more when we go through the win by win or week by week. But you're right. There's just not a lot of places where I think the schedule does the Eagles any favor. And here's the other thing about the schedule. It reads to me like a schedule where the NFL picked the 4 games they wanted the Eagles in prime time, and then they just threw it together at the end. Like, honestly, this reminds me of if I had a high school project where I had to build an NFL schedule and I forgot to do 80% of it until the night before. Like, where is any of the creativity with this? The Washington Commanders twice in 3 weeks to end the season. The Vikings twice in 3 weeks and the earliest part of the season. They play the NFC North, 3 of those opponents in a 4-week schedule. Like, honestly, you could even get as silly as they play LA and Las Vegas in back-to-back weeks. Like, there's just it felt to me Dallas in week 1 is not like a creative opener. It's like, who's the biggest rival? We'll just put them there. I'm not saying the Eagles deserve preferential treatment because I know there's 32 teams, but the reality is there are teams that matter more than the others. And it feels like time and time again, the schedule makers just don't do the Eagles any favors. They had to open in Brazil last year. We remember 2023, the gauntlet. I think this is the first time they're opening at the Link in 5 years, if I'm not mistaken, considering they were in Brazil. So, like, it feels like every year we get the schedule and it's never, yeah, this is a fine schedule. I think this schedule it is not well done by the NFL is really the best way I could put it.
Yeah, I just don't think it does the Eagles any favors. I mean,
Mhm.
just you kind of look through it, and like we said before, it's just it's not something. And you mentioned, week 1 against the Cowboys on Thursday, like that kind of makes sense. I think a lot of people are hoping for maybe the Rams or the Lions or
Yeah.
a team that was in the playoffs last year. I know they're obviously their biggest rival on paper, but you would expect it to be a high profile matchup, right? Usually you get a playoff rematch from the year before, not, hey, this team usually gives you trouble in your division.
Right.
And the rest of the way through, like the Giants on Thursday night, okay, like that's fine. Then you get the Packers on Monday night, the Lions on Sunday night, the Chargers on Monday night, Washington on Saturday, and you get Chicago the Friday of the week at Christmas. Like it's really, really weird. Like there's nothing, it's fine. Like like you said, like if you put a high school project together or even just ran a random computer generator, like if you
Mhm.
were playing Madden 10 years out and, this is what happened, like it's okay. But none of it necessarily, I don't think, gets you terribly excited for a certain part of the schedule.
So the other part of the schedule that's weird, and we knew this going into it, but they do play on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Thursday. So they play, 5 out of the 7 days. And I know the Eagles are a primetime team. That's going to happen. But the 1 o'clock games, so I think the only benefit you could say the schedule makers gave the Eagles is now the opponents are very tough. So I don't think getting out to a good start is going to be easy. But if you look at their first 7 games, 5 of them are at 1 o'clock. And then the other one, it's Thursday night, but that's the first game of the season. I don't think like it really matters what time of the day that game is. And you have a long stretch before the Kansas City game. But five of their 6 1 o'clock games are all before the bye week. The second half, you have 1 1 o'clock game. We'll see what that week 18 ends up being. But ultimately, you are playing a really weird second half of the schedule. And the other thing, like I think if you said to me, what are the 4 games you're most excited for this year? I would say the Chiefs, the Bills, Washington, and the Lions in some order. And everyone can place them in a different order. I think they botched 3 of those opponents. Like, really, the only normal game versus a great team is that Sunday night game against Detroit. If you look at the Washington games, there's a chance they don't even end up mattering. Like, by the time week 16 gets here, there's a chance those games do not matter. And there's a really good chance that week 18 game doesn't matter. So the Eagles playing Washington in Philadelphia in a meaningful game is likely not going to happen this year. And think about how excited everybody was for that matchup. And then Kansas City and Buffalo. To play those games week 2 and week 17, maybe it's just a preference thing. Maybe I'm overdoing it. I just think it's lame. Like, there's no build up for the Kansas City game. The Buffalo game is so far away. Who knows what that game will mean? From a fan perspective, it sucks a little bit. It's going to be so cold there. But regardless, like, I just think of the 4 games I was most excited for. Only one of them can I really look at and go, this is a normal time where I'm excited to watch the game. And there's not a schedule variation that makes it a weird one.
No, you mentioned like the end of the season, and normally, like if that was week 10 through 12, like that would be the gauntlet, right? Like that would be, oh my god, that's unbelievable because you
Yeah.
would expect it to split with Washington, and then that Buffalo games become so crucial on the road. But the fact that it's at the back of the schedule, you mentioned, like, the game against Washington Week 18 might not mean anything, right? Everything
Mhm.
could be wrapped up. Eagles haven't played a meaningful Week 18 game in a couple of years. I guess
Yeah.
against the Giants, they had to win it against the Giants backups to get the 1 seed. But like, Week 18 is normally a glorified scrimmage. Even Week 17 against Buffalo. I mean, Buffalo doesn't play in a pretty exciting division. Like, they might not be playing for anything
Yeah.
at that point. Josh Allen, might not play an entire game. So like, those last 2 weeks of the schedule, which anywhere else on the 18 weeks would be, a huge, huge test. It could be a point where it's not necessarily that big of a deal for the, like, they might not have a lot to play with, or their opponents might not have a lot to play for.
So I have two things, and then we'll get into the week by week prediction, both of which were texted to me, both of which I think are very interesting. The first one, and I'll say who texted me this one. It's our good buddy, the stat master himself, Drew from Westchester. Listen to this stat. Tucker, you are going to freaking love this stat. So the Eagles are the first team, the first Super Bowl champion in NFL history to not play back to back home games the following season.
I mean, they feel like the first team in NFL history to not do that. Like, that is crazy.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how it's possible.
I agree, 100%. But again, I think the Super Bowl champion part of that is important because it does, like, again, I'm not saying they should get preferential treatment. I'm just saying that it's crazy that the Eagles never get it with the schedule. And then the second one, it's more about the schedule. But here's like the issue with playing a team 2 times in 3 weeks. So the only reason the Eagles Giants is interesting is because of Saquon. Like, that's the what everyone wants to see. Let's say Saquon, God forbid, knock on wood, but let's say Saquon gets hurt versus Denver and he's out a month. He now misses both Giants games. So by not spacing those out, you increase the chance that Saquon won't play against the Giants this year. And frankly, we only got him against the Giants once last year. He didn't play in that last game. But then Washington twice, week 16 and 18 to end the season. There's a decent chance the Eagles play the Commanders in the playoffs. They did it last year, right? I think we both think Washington and Eagles will be in the playoffs. So let's say they play in the first game. Well, then you're getting Washington Eagles 3 times in a month. Or let's say they play in the second round. Then you're getting it 3 times in 5 weeks. The best case scenario is you get it in the championship game and it's 3 times in 6 weeks, if my math is correct about that. So, like,
Yeah.
by bunching these games, you're ruining them, in my opinion. And again, that week 18 versus Washington at home, that could have been one of the best games of the year. And the schedule ruins it because A, it's probably going to be meaningless. And B, there's a chance that even if it means something, which I guess they would play their starters, but you could be playing that team in a week or two. And so there's a strategic thing in there on what do you do. So
I mean, that feels like a game that should have been the opener, right? Like, if you wanted to schedule them against a division team, it should have been Washington in week 1, right? NFC
yeah, I
Championship
agree.
rematch. Jaden Daniels seems to be maybe on the rise to be one of the faces of the NFL. You showcase him in your biggest regular season game. Like, that feels like the hit, not, hey, let's trot out, Dak Prescott and pray he stays healthy.
I agree. Again, I think it's a lazy schedule. I just think it's a lazily put together schedule. So, all
Do you
right.
think they were lazy putting it together? Like, when they
I,
scheduled
I
all
honest
whatever
to
it is,
God,
like 256 games, think they just mailed it in?
honestly, like, I don't want to offend whoever made the schedule, but it comes across to me like they forgot they had to finish the Eagles schedule and just crammed some games. And like that's how it reads to me. All right, let's go through the win-loss prediction for the season. Did you do this already? Like, do you have this written down or you?
No, I'm going to shoot from the hip.
I
That's
like that.
in the spirit of this exercise. Like, I feel like if you put too much thought into it, it doesn't work.
Trust me, I'm not a big put a lot of thought into things guy, but just try to keep track of where you have them at because that I think is the toughest part of doing this live.
Yep.
All right. Week 1, Dallas Cowboys, Thursday night football, win or loss.
Win, right? Like, they have to
Yeah.
win at home. I think back to 2018 where they came out flat against Atlanta and then kind of turned it on in the second half. This team shows up in big games. They show up under bright lights. I think it's probably a close game because the Cowboys are healthy and they are a somewhat talented roster, but I think the Eagles win that game.
So I agree. I have it down as a win as well. I think what you said there is really true. The Eagles are a primetime team that show up under the lights. I can't think of many critical games they've lost. Obviously, like the Tampa Bay playoff games, obviously important. Now, 2021 is like a different lifetime ago. But regardless, I trust them in a big spot. I also, as a favorite, if I'm not mistaken, on Bet Parks, they opened up as like 7-point favorites. So the
I think
Eagles
it was
do,
7 or 7.5 most
yeah,
places.
they win quite a bit. I don't have the stat in front of me, but they win a large percentage of games where they're favorites, and they actually cover quite a bit too. So I'll probably pick them to cover the game, but I have this down as a win as well. So we both have them starting 1-0.
1-0.
Okay, now this is where their schedule is unforgiving because if they were to lose to Dallas in week 1, which I think we'd both be surprised by, that being said, it's not losing to the Panthers or, some trash team like that. Like Dallas with Dak wins a large percentage of their games as well for what it's worth. But if you lose that game, then you go to Kansas City and then that becomes a critically important game. I'll go first with this one. I think they beat the Chiefs. I think they beat them in 2023. They should have beat them in 2022. They demolished them in 2024. Did the Eagles lose talent? Yes. Are the Chiefs going to have this circled? Yes. But the mistake I made leading up to the Super Bowl was just overlooking how much the talent discrepancy was on these two teams. Mahomes and Andy are outstanding. Jalen and Nick are in their class current day. Obviously, not overall, they're not. But the talent discrepancy is too big. I know the Chiefs will have it circled, but the Eagles have a better rest advantage. I think the Eagles win the game.
Yeah, I think it's a game where either the Eagles win big or the Chiefs win close, which is what the
Yep.
Chiefs did all year last year, right? They didn't
Agreed.
blow anybody out. They kind of skated by. I think there's a point at one of these next 3 weeks where there's going to be an early season letdown. I think
Mhm.
this might be it. I think they go in. I think everyone's riding high. They haven't lost obviously since the Washington game where Jalen Hurts got injured,
Mhm.
which would be 10 or 11 months before that. I think they lose this game. I don't.
Okay.
I think they could blow them out, like you said. I think they're a more talented team, but I think the motivation on the Chiefs side, the fact that Andy Reid is one of the greatest coaches, and pretty much I don't know who Kansas City has week 1. If I go back and look at their schedule
It's
real
in
quick,
it's in
they're
Brazil.
in they're against the Chargers in Brazil, which obviously isn't a game you can overlook in the division. But I think this is the game they probably have circled on their calendar from
Yeah.
the beginning of training camp.
All right, so you have them at 101. I have them at 2-0. Next up, the Los Angeles Rams at home. Similar game to the Chiefs, where obviously the Rams are going to come in here very, very motivated. I mean, Jared Verse, I think, said that he's thought about it every single day since they lost.
I think he
Look,
said
could
3 times a day.
3 times a day. That's pretty crazy. So look, could the Rams beat the Eagles? Yes. But in the spirit of the exercise, like I think the Rams are better. I'm sorry, the Eagles are just better than the Rams. I think there's actually probably more of a talent gap between the Chiefs and the Eagles and the Rams and the Eagles. The Rams defensive line is very good, obviously, but we'll see who starts at right guard. Maybe that's an issue. But I think the Eagles win the game, so I have them starting 3-0.
Yeah, I think this is a game. The Eagles have the Rams number. The Eagles beat the Rams,
Yep.
pretty consistently.
Well, let's
I think
rephrase
they
that. Nick Sirianni has Sean McVay's number.
also did Doug Peterson. Doug Peterson and Nick
Fair,
Foles beat
fair,
them
fair.
multiple times
Yeah.
too. So I think this is a game they win. They come back at home. We've talked about their home field advantage. I think this is a game that they're able to take care of business as well.
All right, so I have them at 3-0. You have them at 2-1. Here's my early season letdown, and it's Tampa Bay. I know that they're better than the Bucks, but it's a little like maybe PTSD in me where like I've seen them lose in Tampa Bay too many times. I actually am not sure I've ever seen them win in Tampa Bay. Now I think about it because when they won in 2023, I was in Scotland. So, they're better against the blitz now. That being said, they have a new offensive coordinator. We'll see if Patullo's up for the matchup with Todd Bowles. I have this down as a loss, so I have them dropping to 3-1.
Yeah, I think this is like you said. Maybe it's just PTSD. Maybe we're
Yeah.
worried about it. But the new offensive coordinator, I think, is a part of it. I think the idea that maybe there is an early season hiccup because there's a new issue or something pops up with the new offensive coordinator and things aren't running as smoothly as they were at the end of the season with Kellen Moore. I think that could come back to haunt them as well. So I'll chalk this down as a loss as well.
All right, so you have them at 2-2, same after 4 games as they were last year. I have them at 3-1.
So who
Next up,
shaves their head at this point?
I mean, honestly, it might be Nick again, depending if he's grown it out for training camp. All right, next up, week 5, Denver Broncos at home. A sneaky tough game. I like Bo Nix. They have a good defense. A Vic Fangio revenge game potentially. But where I just brought him up, I'll say Vic Fangio versus a second-year quarterback in Bo Nix. I like the Vic Fangio matchup versus Sean Payton. I'm going to give the Eagles a win on this one as well. I have them at 4-1.
Yeah, I have the Eagles winning this one as well. Denver's coming off. They play Monday night the week prior against Cincinnati at home,
Mhm.
a West Coast team. Then coming to play the Eagles at 1 o'clock is a tough spot for them as well. I know they're technically Mountain Time, but yeah, I think this is a game the Eagles win.
So you want to talk about teams that have each other's numbers. The Eagles own the Giants. We have seen that. They beat the Giants all the time. This is the stretch of the schedule where they have the Giants twice in 3 weeks. The first one at New York, Thursday night football. Saquon goes back to New York in prime time. They're not losing this game. Again, I'm a Jackson Dart guy. Like, we'll talk about that throughout the offseason. I think Jackson Dart's going to be special. I'm in on him, but I don't think he's going to start the year. Now, Russell Wilson has given the Eagles struggles for sure. I can't remember the last time they beat Russell Wilson, actually. Unless, was it last year? Was
Well,
he
they beat
starting
the
for this year?
Steelers last year,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So that would have been it. Yeah. But I have them winning this one too. So I have them at 5-1.
Has Nick Sirianni ever lost on Thursday Night Football? I think he's undefeated.
Yeah, I don't think he has. It's a good point.
So I think the Eagles win this one as well. My more curious point is, do they play the same quarterback in week 6 and 8? Do they play
It's a good
Russell
one.
Wilson in 6 and 8, or do they switch at some point to Jackson Dart in that short turnaround?
I think they're wasting time until they play Jackson Dart. But
they play
yeah.
at Denver. That's kind of funny. They play at Denver the weeks between they play the Eagles.
Again, the NFL just lazily putting this thing together. So you have them beating the Giants, I assume.
Yes.
All right. So I have them at 5-1. You have them at
I have them at
4-2. All right.
Yep.
Next up, Minnesota. Again, maybe it's a PTSD thing, but the last time I saw them play in Minnesota was 2018. I know it's completely different teams. They got thrown all over. I do think this is a game where the second cornerback spot will be very much tested. Jordan Addison from Minnesota, I think, is a really tough cover. I don't think he lines up in the slot a ton. We'll see Quinion versus Justin Jefferson, which will be awesome. You get JJ McCarthy not super late into his career. It would be, I don't know when the Vikings bye is, but you would think at most, obviously, the 7th start of his career. I still think this is a loss. I have this one down as a loss. Minnesota has a great defense. Brian Flores versus Jalen, I'm interested in seeing. So I'll put this down as a loss.
Yeah, so this is the only game, at least from my cursory glance at the NFL schedule while we're doing this, the only game the Eagles are playing a team that's coming off a bye week.
Wow.
Minnesota's on a bye week the week before. The week prior, they're in London. They play Cleveland.
Oh, they
week
do
5.
the back-to-back thing. They go back-to-back internationally, then they have the bye. The Vikings.
Yeah, they're against Pittsburgh in Ireland. They're against Cleveland in London. Then they have a bye week. Then they come home. Feels like a spot where they'd be ripe for a win. Like you get some rest. Maybe they split that international travel. I think them against Cleveland. I think having the second game internationally is a huge advantage for them. But yeah, this is a game that I think will be tougher than maybe we expect, especially if JJ McCarthy is playing and getting his first reps this year as a starting quarterback. But I like Vic Fangio against a young quarterback. I have a hard time picking against them, even though they do have talent across the board. I'll chalk that up as a win.
So next up, the Giants at home. I have the Eagles coming off a loss. I don't think they're going to lose 2 games in a row when one of those games is the Giants. So I have the Giants losing that game in Philadelphia, obviously. And yeah, will they get the same quarterback 2 games in a row is interesting because we haven't even talked about Jameis Winston. There's a chance that he goes in before Jackson Dart does. So I have the Eagles winning this game, and they enter the bye week at 6-2.
Yeah, I don't think there's much to say about it. They were better than the Giants 2 weeks earlier. They're going to be better than the Giants in week 8 at home.
Yeah.
I think they win that game, and they head in their bye week 6-2.
All right, so we both have them at 6-2, slightly different ways, but they enter week 9 at 6-2 for their bye week. Week 10.
Do you like the week 9 bye week? Do you like the basement there?
I do. Like, I think, like, first of all, just aesthetically, it looks nice. But also, I do think that players do bring up that they prefer an early bye week because training camp is so hard on their bodies. Like, they have that full month. So we view it as right in the middle. I think they would view it as not so much right in the middle. They would view it as they're working basically nonstop from the end of July to, first week of November or wherever that would fall. So I think the players would prefer an early bye week, but I'm fine with it in the middle. What do you think?
Yeah, aesthetically, it's pleasing that it's exactly halfway through.
Yeah.
I'm already excited for Birds at the bye. If we do that again this year, it fits perfectly into the schedule. But I never thought about the training camp thing. That's a good point.
Yeah.
I think that's something that a lot of people don't necessarily bring up because last year it was, a worrisome thing that they had a week 5 bye week And, they ended up playing however many weeks that was after, like 20 weeks in a row
Yeah.
without having a bye until they had the bye before the Super Bowl. But yeah, I mean, this is something where it could feel later because not only did they have training camp, but they had a shorter offseason too, like not as much recovery time coming into the season.
It's pretty crazy. I forget that they didn't have the number one seed last year. Like I remember them as so dominant, but yeah, they didn't have the bye in the playoffs either. Okay. Week 10. I think this might honestly be the coolest trip of the season from a fan's perspective. Make sure you check out Fans of Philly. I'm sure they have all their stuff up. Green Bay Packers, Monday Night Football, Lambeau Field, under the lights. It's going to be an awesome game. I've been to Green Bay. If you haven't, it is like a bucket list thing as an NFL fan. You should definitely check it out. Not often do I say it's a revenge game for a head coach, but man, I just think there's no shot Nick Sirianni's losing this game. With all the tush push stuff, with the fact that they've essentially tried to take away the Eagles' best play throughout the offseason, I think Nick finds it offensive. They're trying to do it. I think the whole team will be motivated. It would not shock me if we get a tush push at one point that's out of character just to kind of rub it in if they're allowed to run it. Obviously, they might not be able to. But regardless, I think they win this game in honor of the tush push. I have the Eagles winning and moving to 7-2.
Yeah, and coming off a bye, Nick Sirianni has obviously been very successful coming off a bye. They get the extra day, so it's 15 days off between week 8 and week 10. I think this is a game that they win.
All right, so we both have them at 7-2. Next up, the Detroit Lions at home Sunday Night Football. So they go from Monday Night Football to Sunday Night Football. I think it's the only time this season where they're prime time. It depends what you think of Black Friday. I would consider that a prime time game. But regardless, prime time to prime time, nighttime to nighttime. Detroit Lions at home. Again, like I hate to pick them to win all the time, but at the end of the day, they do win all the time and they win big games and they're good at getting up for games. I think the Lions, week 11, they will obviously want to win this game. Although, really, there's not a bad blood between the teams. They haven't played since when did the last time they played? Was it 2023 they went there?
They played week 1 of 2022.
That was it. Week 1, 2022. The Eagles beat the Lions in Detroit in 2022. I think they beat them at home this time again. Now they'd be a bit of a winning streak. For me, this would be they'd have 3 games in a row at this point. But yeah, I think they beat the Lions at home.
I think this is a loss. I think this is a situation where if the Lions are healthy, and who knows kind of what their situation is, they lost coaches, obviously, and have a little bit more turnover than they did a year ago. But think about, where we were last year in the regular season. They were considered the best team in the NFL. They were the class of the NFL from, week 1 really through week 15 when those injuries started to pile up. I think if they're healthy, this is a huge prove it moment for them. If they're, trying to prove that they're the same team that they were a year ago, that they belong on the Eagles level, because it really took a month for everyone to forget about them and put the Eagles at the top of the NFL. So I think this is a situation where the Lions come in incredibly motivated and maybe they steal one on prime time after the Eagles come off of a short rest road trip.
All right, so you have the Eagles at 7-3, if I'm not mistaken. I have them at 8-2.
8-2.
Week 12 at Dallas. I have this one as a loss. I think playing in Dallas is super difficult. Even last year, we saw the Eagles, while they ended up winning the game by quite a bit, they did struggle early on. That forced fumble, the Cowboys were going in at halftime. They could have been winning the game. Dallas is an interesting team. Like I could picture week 12, they only have 4 wins, but just because I don't believe in the coaching staff, I think they're a combustible situation. But as much as people don't want to admit it, like Dak Prescott wins in the regular season all the time. Like they consistently win 10 plus games with him. So I think this could be a game where the Cowboys are still in it. So I'm going to give him a loss.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's going to be a point where maybe there's a little bit of a crisis. It's not an Eagles season if at some point we don't panic.
Exactly.
And maybe this is it. Maybe they lose at home to the Lions. They go to the Cowboys. Everyone thinks it's a get-right week. And, that stadium, which has been a house of horrors for them really over the last decade, maybe they lose another winnable game. Maybe something happens, a late fumble. The defense allows a late touchdown to let the Cowboys take the lead. But I think that's another loss where we enter the week of Christmas kind of panicking that maybe they're leaking oil a little bit.
So I'd have to look this up, but I think in 2022 and 2024, did Jalen lose back-to-back starts? He didn't in 2024. In 2022, I don't think he did either. So in the 2 years Jalen has lost games in back-to-back seasons, they haven't won a playoff game. In the 2 years when he doesn't, they went to the Super Bowl. If I'm not mistaken, right? 2021, he definitely did. 2023, he definitely did.
Because he was 14-1 as a starter last year.
Right. So he obviously didn't.
And he
And then
lost, obviously, 5 out of 6 the year before. The only game he lost as a starter in 2022 was the home game against Washington.
right.
And then
So that
obviously they lost 7 or 8 games in
so
2021.
it is pretty crazy if you look at Jalen's career. Like the 2021 was streaky, right? They start with not great, and then they go on the streak to end the year. 2022, whole year they're dominant. 2023, they're dominant to start, streaky at the end. 2024, they're dominant throughout. I bring this up to say the chances of them losing back-to-back games are kind of slim. Like, and if they do, you talk about panic. The times where they've lost back to back, it's like things are not going well. Now, I'm not going to panic over back to back losses. Lots of teams have them, but it's really not something Jalen does in years where he has successful years, and the team in general, not just Jalen. So, yeah, losses to the Lions and Cowboys, I think, would definitely get people going. Next up, week 13, Black Friday, Chicago Bears. I think they win. The Bears are another team like the Cowboys where you could tell me at this point of the year they're completely out of it, or they're like, wow, Caleb Williams is amazing. The new head coach is unbelievable. But I think that the Eagles beat the Bears. I don't think the Bears are ready for a primetime game like this to beat the Eagles in Philadelphia.
No, I think this is a win too. I think like you said, a primetime situation where it is Black Friday. I know it's a Saturday there, but it is on Friday.
Yeah.
It's a situation that I don't think the Bears are necessarily ready for. And if the Eagles are coming off back-to-back losses, I think this is kind of a get-right week where they go out on primetime and they show everybody that we're still the defending champions.
Yeah. So I have the Eagles at this point at 9-3. Going into the Chargers game, Monday Night Football, I have this one down as a loss. Unfamiliar opponent. I think the Chargers are a tough team. I think they're a physical team. I think they're one of the few teams that maybe, like physicality wise, can maybe match the Eagles. I don't think they can beat them in the way like consistently. The Eagles are the better team. But prime time, LA, I have them losing the game, which would give them 2 losses in 3 games for me, but not back-to-back losses.
Yeah, the Chargers last year were probably the only defense that kind of rivaled the Eagles' success. They struggled against the
Yep.
run, though, so maybe that makes it more of a favorable matchup for the Eagles. So I'll put them down as a win for this one, but I do think it's maybe a tougher game given kind of where the Chargers are on the upswing.
Yeah, and look, we finally get Justin Herbert versus Jalen Hurts, which I feel like is a matchup literally everyone's obsessed with talking
We get
about
that in
on Twitter.
2021?
We did, yes, but now honestly, 2021 doesn't really count for me for Jalen. Like I know it does, and it's part of it, but like I view the Eagles in 3 different ways: 2020, 2021, and 2022 and on. Like I think those are the 3 iterations of Jalen Hurts. Okay, next up after the Chargers, look, who knows what their record will be, so maybe it's not a must-win game, but I think when you look at like what they want to accomplish, how the schedule works out, the Las Vegas Raiders are a game you have to win. And I know with Geno Smith, Pete Carroll, Chip Kelly, everyone's favorite head coach comes back, but like this is a game you have to win. It's at 1:00, so the Raiders are traveling over from the West Coast for an early kickoff. It's cold, like you got to win this game, and I think they will.
Yeah, I think they do too. I just think they're better than the Raiders. Maybe the Raiders surprise everybody and they have somewhat success, but I mean, people forget the Eagles are probably the most successful team in the NFL, or at least the
Mhm.
NFC, since they hired Chip Kelly. What he did in 2013 really turned the wheels in motion for this
Yeah,
team to
there
figure
you
things
go.
out.
People often give Chip credit
People
for it,
people
so great
forget
job,
like
buddy.
that. You
Yeah.
go back to 2013 to now, Eagles the best team in the NFC by far. So Chip Kelly probably gets a nice video tribute. They show
Yeah, I'm
highlights from
sure.
Week
Yeah,
One,
him and Howard on
2013
the
against
field before the
Washington,
game.
and
Yeah.
forget the other 3 years. But yeah, I think that's easy to chalk up as a win.
All right, so I have them at 7-2, 8-2, 9-2, 10-2. I think I have them at 10-4, if I'm not
We both had
mistaken.
them at 10-4.
Okay, yeah, 10-4. Okay, so next up, Week 16. Maybe let's do this. No, let's just do them individually. All right, Week 16, Washington Commanders away. So here's the deal. I think everyone's going to look at this and go, the Commanders going to be so hype, blah, blah, blah. The Eagles smoked the Commanders in the playoffs, obviously. They should have beaten them with Kenny Pickett. Like, they're just better than the Commanders. They just are. And I also think that Jaden Daniels is going to take a step back this year. I think it's really hard to have repeat success. Me and James talk about this a lot. So I think the Eagles go a Saturday, kind of a primetime game. And I think they remind the Commanders, like, why they smacked them around in the playoffs. I think they win this game.
I think they do too. I think they're better than Commanders, and we can talk about maybe what we think this game will mean in the grand
Yeah.
scheme of things, like where
Yeah.
we think the Commanders are. Like, is going to 11-4 wrap up the division, necessarily. Maybe that builds you a 2-game lead heading into the last 2 games of the season. But yeah, I think this is a situation where, when we look at the schedule, and maybe there are bigger games and more important games, or, you're playing more talented teams like Kansas City or Detroit. But I think this game in week 16, like, this could be the most important game on the
For
schedule.
sure. And I will also say, from a perspective of like advantages, the Eagles getting the maybe only important game against Washington away, and then the one they get at home might not matter. Like, that is a disadvantage for the Eagles against Washington. And again, like, I think the Eagles and Washington could end up being the two best teams in the NFC, but one of them will be the 1 seed and one of them will be the 5 seed. So even if they are the two best teams, like, this could be a ultra critical important game for the Eagles. All right, next up, Buffalo. It's hard to know what to make of this game, especially when you get so late into the season. I think the Eagles can definitely beat Buffalo. We've seen them do it. Now, in that game, they were down big. They end up coming back. Like, I think Buffalo's a very good team. Josh Allen, obviously an outstanding quarterback. I have it down as a loss. There's not like a great reason on the schedule why. I just think Buffalo in Buffalo is really tough to beat, and I'll pick the Eagles. I mean, the Bills.
I think I'll pick the Eagles for this one. We just don't know. Like, it's so tough, and obviously that's the point of this exercise. It's tough scheduling out. Like, who knows where they are? They're coming off back-to-back road games. I think against the Giants and Cleveland. So that's a situation where they're coming home and probably coming off a pair of wins. So maybe they're exhausted from a pair of road games and coming home to a frozen field against a pretty good team in the Eagles. So I'll give the Eagles the win on that one.
All right, final game of the season, Washington Commanders at home. Here's how way I'll phrase this. If they need to beat Washington, I think they'll beat Washington. I think it's probably unlikely, but let's say it means nothing for Washington. Obviously, the Eagles win the game. I think they're better, and I think if they have to have it. But again, back to the 2 weeks and 2 games in 3 weeks. This could be essentially some version of a playoff game, or like an absolutely have to have it game. So I think it probably won't be. I think it probably won't mean anything, but I'm going to pick the Eagles to win the game.
I think I will too, but like you said, I don't know what it's going to look like. Like, this could be a situation where both teams are playing backups because they're locked into the 1 and 5. Because if the Eagles are locked into 1, the Commanders are probably locked into 5. Now, maybe they're playing for seeding. Maybe the Vikings are good again. Maybe the NFC West has a couple good teams, and an 11-win team ends up being the 5 seed. So that could be a situation they find themselves in. But it's just as likely that both teams are really just playing out the string and trying to stay healthy.
So this might qualify under and I know we knew the opponents prior, but man, am I tripping? They don't play anybody from the NFC South. How many years? Tampa Bay. There you go.
They have to. You have to play someone from every division.
I was gonna say it feels like but you're right. This is just late night Elliott tired. Okay, so I have them finishing at 12-5,
and I have them at 13-4.
I think 12-5 is a good outcome for this schedule. It probably doesn't get them the 1 seed, but when you consider how tough it is coming off a Super Bowl win, how tough the schedule is opponent-wise, and how tough the schedule is the way it's laid out, I think 12-5, if you could sign me up for 12-5 now, I would do it.
I think most people would, right? Like, that guarantees a playoff spot. It more than likely gives you a division win, and obviously they were able to make the Super Bowl last year from the 2 seed. So yeah, if you end up in the 2 or 3 spot at 12-5, I think most people would be happy. It's hard to be upset at a 12.
Would you sign up for 11 right now?
Guaranteed?
Yeah. I think
because that gets you back in the playoffs.
Because it also
I trust this team. Do you trust this team enough in the postseason to where that would be okay? Even if you have to go on the road in the wild card weekend?
I don't think going on the road is a huge deal for this team, unless it's Tampa Bay. But it also probably means Jalen's healthy. I think I would sign up for 11 wins. Looking at this, if you gave me 11 wins right now, I would do it.
Isn't it crazy how far our perspective has shifted?
I know.
That 11 wins is I guess we'll take it.
Well, it's funny because the midday show always does the whole Super Bowl fever. What do they call it? Of course, I can't remember. But basically, everything is rationalized by the fact the Eagles won the Super Bowl. The Eagles are really good. I was thinking midway through this exercise that I would guess a lot of teams that are doing it pod-wise, it's maybe you give them the benefit there. But if you're the Giants, have you seen the Giants beginning of the schedule? The Giants beginning of the schedule is brutal. There
at
are
Washington, at Dallas, home against Kansas City.
They could legit be 0-3 to start off. That's the one defense I'll give of Brian Dable is like it does feel like they get brutal starts to the schedule every year. It's just
I
like
will
they
say, it
it,
looks like Washington has a pretty easy start to the schedule. Like if we want to talk
what do
about
they
kind of
have?
where
Yeah.
everyone ends up in the NFC East, they open home against the Giants, and they go to Green Bay on a Saturday night. That's probably their toughest game.
Mm-hmm.
Home against Vegas, at Atlanta, and then they go at the Chargers, and then home
Yeah.
against Chicago.
I would
So I
say the
mean, that's a
Eagles is way
situation where
tougher.
4-2 is probably worst case scenario.
Well, and that does make 2 times in 3 weeks at the end of the season more important because you could be chasing them. So like go, but again, having the first one in Washington, it sucks for the Eagles. All right. What did you said you maybe wanted to do questions from people? Did you write any down? Do we have any or
Not really, no. Just a
all
lot of
right.
lot of predictions, a lot of 13 wins, 12 wins, 14 wins.
I think that's all
ESP is
fair.
spot on. Yeah, so
Yeah, I'm sure there's lots of ESP spot on, I'm sure. All right. Well, any other thoughts on the schedule before we wrap this bad boy up?
I don't think so. I think it's a situation where, a lot of things are going to change between now and training camp, but I think as it stands right now, it's going to be a grind. Like there's not going to be a situation where maybe last year where you had 3, 4, 5 games in a row against losing teams. I don't see it. And that's the nature of having a first place schedule, obviously. And it's the nature of kind of where the Eagles are competitively. That's why the NFL thrives on parity, is because of the way they put these schedules out there. But the fact that they now have a legitimate contender in their own division, the NFC, I think, is stacked again. Unlike the AFC, that probably has 3 or 4 really good teams, and the rest is kind of slop. I think it's going to be a grind, but I think the Eagles are good enough to kind of overcome that.
So my final thought is going to be a selfish one, which is, what do you think the Go Birds road trip should be? Obviously, we'll talk about this with James tomorrow, but we had talked about it being Buffalo, but week 17 is tough. Like December, Buffalo, that's a tough one. I'm kind of looking at Green Bay. Like I know it's an expensive trip, but man, that's a dope trip. Minnesota, maybe. I don't think you want to do the Chiefs week 2. That feels too early. What do you think?
Yeah, and I don't think you want to go to Tampa Bay. Like that just doesn't sound fun
Yeah.
for anyone
Now,
at all. Yeah,
I mean, it's the best
it's a
weather.
rough kind of road trip. I mean, maybe the Chargers in week 14.
I think LA's overrated. Just my
It's kind
opinion.
of tough that their 2 best road games at Green Bay and at the Chargers are both on Monday night. Like that's a tough
True, I
ask
didn't
for
think
people
about that.
too.
Yeah.
Maybe at Washington in week 16 to watch them close the division, but that's not necessarily a road trip. Like that's a day trip. You could do
that's
that.
a day trip.
You
Now,
could
the
do
nice
that
thing about
in my Camry.
the nice thing about Green Bay is it's only 3 hours away from Chicago, I think. So you could do like Chicago Saturday, Sunday, go to Green Bay Monday morning as a potential thing. But I don't know. This is something we'll discuss with James tomorrow. I feel like you should come on the trip this year, by the way.
All right, let's do it.
There we go. It's decided.
I'll be married by then. Like it'll be good.
It's exactly. Hey, you can.
Side note: Eagles preseason schedule came out. They aren't playing the day of my wedding, so
it's so funny.
Good news for everybody.
I literally, when you sent the wedding invite out, I was like, I know he won't pick a time that conflicts with my schedule, like not my schedule, but like with our schedule, right? Like with the Eagles. But I didn't think that you don't know the preseason dates. So what were the preseason dates? I know you put.
So they're home against Cincinnati on the 7th. I'm not sure what day of the week that is. I think that's a Thursday.
I'll pull up my calendar. August.
I think that's a Thursday. So Thursday, August 7th. Cincinnati at home, 7:30. August 16th, which is a Saturday.
So you could have been in trouble there.
Yeah, so that's Cleveland at home, 1:00, and then the
1:00. By the way, no Go Birds then, I guess. But
no Go Birds radio, no. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
And then they close out the preseason on the 22nd, that Friday night at the Jets, 7:30.
And what day is your wedding again?
The 23rd. So the very night. I'll miss it because I'll be at my rehearsal dinner.
Yeah, you'll do the rehearsal.
Okay.
And where's your wedding? It's in Jersey, right?
Yeah, it's in Redneck.
You don't have to say where, right? Okay, so that's what I mean. So me and James could do the game Friday night and come to the wedding on Saturday.
It wasn't anything I thought about until I sent it to Mike Angelina, and he's like, "Well, I'll let you know if the Eagles play."
Dude, tell me, my entire life sometimes gets dictated by this stupid schedule. But all right, that'll do it for the emergency podcast. Tucker, thank you for filling in. You did it admirably.
No problem.
Very much appreciate it. We will talk to you guys tomorrow. Me and James are going to record a pod. Won't be live because of the YouTube thing. We'll have it in your feeds at some point, and James will give you his thoughts on the schedule. So thank you guys so much for listening. As always, he's Elliot. I'm Tucker.